Welcome to video number 21 in the Using iTrain tutorial series. My name is Bob and we're continuing our journey in understanding iTrain, kindly assisted by Ian Morrison. In this tutorial we'll create a train route using blocks. Welcome back. At the end of the last video I said that in the next tutorial we would take an even deeper look into how reaction delay works. Well, on reflection, and whilst looking back at the last few tutorials, it's clear that we have already more than covered this subject. So we can now move on to the next topic, which is train routes. We have already previously covered track routes and instant routes. But in iTrain there are 4 types of route that we can choose. Track routes, which we covered in tutorial number 7, simply allow us to set a route of track. We create a list of turnouts or signals in a specific order and set them to a specific state. When we click on the track route, it reserves the route for as long as the track route is set. The disadvantages of track routes is that they provide no automatic driving. So the route needs to be driven manually by ourselves. And we would need to create a lot of track routes to cover every combination of route that is possible on our layout. But their advantage is that track routes can be saved and can be activated and recalled at a click of a button. So they can be useful, for example, when we want to perform some manual shunting maneuvers. Instant routes, which we covered in tutorial 11, 12 and 13, allow us to quickly set and reserve a route on which we can drive our trains manually, semi-automatically or fully automatically. No programming is involved. We simply drag and drop to create the route. They perform the same function as track routes in that they set and reserve a length of track, but the route is temporary and is not saved. Once the instant route is finished, it is lost. Their advantage is that we can quickly set a route and they can be used for quite complex automatic or semi-automatic operations like auto-reversing or splitting and combining trains. Train routes, which we only touched on briefly in tutorial number 18, are the most sophisticated and commonly used of the 4 routes. They allow us to construct complex routes and save them, so they combine many of the advantages of track routes and instant routes. They are intelligent, being capable of making decisions and can react to actions. We create train routes separately and then assign them to trains, so we could have different trains running different train routes or the same train route, and we can drive the train routes in automatic mode, semi-automatic mode or manual mode. So on a club layout, for example, you can use train routes to set the route and control the turnouts and signals, and then allow the operators to drive the trains manually or in any combination of automatic, semi-automatic or manual control. The fourth and last type of route in iTrain is called automatic routing. To drive automatically in iTrain, it's not necessary to create a route and attach it to a train like with train routes. We can also let iTrain find a route automatically based on the train type, the settings in the stations and other parameters, and let iTrain drive the train more or less randomly. We will cover automatic routing in a future tutorial. In this video, we will focus on creating a train route. We will not go through every option that a train route has. We will do that in later videos. Okay, so here we have the little test track that we're going to use to create our train route. Now you may recognize certain sections of this layout here. This part down the bottom is the sidings that we've used in previous tutorials, and all that I've done is to extend this around in a loop to create a main line, and added a runaround loop in this upper section and removed one of the sidings from the lower section. By the end of this tutorial, we will have created a train route that takes a train that is stored in the south siding, moves it onto the main line, and then moves around in an anti-clockwise direction. We will create some random stops at either of the north platforms here, and we will create a scheduled stop at one of the three platforms in the south station here, before we then repeat the loop around the oval again. The loop will be repeated several times before we then store the train back into this south siding. On the switchboard, I've added some images of arrows which help us to indicate the direction of next in each of the blocks. This symbol here is for the booster that is on my layout. We won't be using the booster in this tutorial because we will be doing everything in offline mode. Okay, so to create a train route, we need to open the train route editor. And we should know by now, to open any editor, we go up to the edit menu, and then we can select the train routes from the list here, or we can press the short keys Control plus Shift key plus F4. So here we have a fairly typical editor layout which would list any previous train routes that we created in the left hand section here for this particular layout. We want to create a new train route, so we go down to the new button down here and press new. As usual, the first thing we need to do is give it a name, so we will call it Tutorial 21, and we can give it an optional description, and I will call it Train Route Using Blocks Only. In the type box here, we will leave it at default. There are other options called shunt and mixed, which we will cover in future tutorials. Train routes are basically a list of blocks and or stations that should be visited by the train, and we list each of those blocks or stations in this upper window here. In most cases, a route is made so that it can be repeated, and in which case we make sure that the last item in the route is also available earlier in the list, preferably at the start, so that the route can be picked up again from an earlier point. And we'll see this as we create our train route. So if we were creating a train route that went from South Platform 1 to East to North Platform 1 and back again, the sequence would be South Platform 1, East, North Platform 1, East, and back to South Platform 1. For a circular route, the sequence would be South Platform 1, East, North Platform 1, West, and back to South Platform 1. In our example, to begin with, we are just going to create a simple loop around the oval in an anti-clockwise direction. So our first step will be the start, which will be at South Platform 1. And we enter that step in this upper window here by pressing the append button. And then in this lower window, we select the items that are going to be used in this particular step. In this first step, we're just using a single block, so we click on the choice here called block. And from this drop-down menu, we can then select the South Platform 1. And you can see it is now listed as our first step. Now we want to travel in an anti-clockwise direction around this loop. So to help to ensure that that happens, we will change the direction here from both to next, because we can see by the arrows that I've included in the switchboard, direction next is in this direction, which is the anti-clockwise direction. Because this is our starting block, there is no benefit in having any wait time for this particular step. So we leave the percentage chance of waiting at the value of 0%. And there will be no waiting when we press the start button to activate the route. We don't need to select any of the other options that are shown here, so that's our first step completed. To enter the next step, we go up to the upper window again and press append. So you can start to see that the list of steps is being shown in this upper window, with the sequence starting at the top step and then working down the list. Now we don't have to click every block in the list, because iTrain will try to take the shortest route to our next destination. So we can skip the east block, and for our next step we'll just go straight to North Platform 1. We're just talking about a single block again, so we can go down into the lower window here, select block, and then from the drop down menu we'll select North Platform 1. And again, to ensure that the train continues round in an anti-clockwise direction, we will select the direction next in the list here. We're not going to stop at platform 1, so we will leave the percentage wait chance at 0 again, so that the train passes straight through North Platform 1. For our next step, carrying on round, we can skip the west step and go straight to South Platform 1 again. But we need to make sure that we select the direction next for this step. Otherwise, iTrain could choose to go from North Platform 1 in a clockwise direction down to South Platform 1. But that would mean that the train was entering in the direction previous. And so by setting this step to next, it will ensure that the train, or that iTrain, makes the train go round in this anti-clockwise direction, so that it is entering the platform, entering the block in the direction next. So we'll go up to the upper window again, press append to enter our next step. We're talking about a single block again, so we'll go down to the choice block, and from the drop down menu we select South Platform 1 again, and we make sure that it is in the next direction. So that is our loop completed from South Platform 1 around to North Platform 1 and then round to South Platform 1 again. But it's very important that the last step in the route has a 100% chance of waiting. In other words, it will definitely wait when it gets to this step. And in fact, there must be at least one location on a train route where the train definitely stops and it has a 100% chance of stopping. So we will make this 100% in this step here as our end step. And when you have any kind of wait here, you need to give it a duration. And to give it a specific figure, say we want to give it a 1 second wait time, we would enter 1 into both the minimum and the maximum boxes here. If we wanted to vary the length of the stop, we could set a range, for example setting a minimum of 5 seconds and a maximum of 15 seconds, which would mean that the length of the stop could be anything from 5 to 15 seconds. So we now have all these steps in our train route, and if we started the route now, it would go round each of the steps and then end at this last step here. But we want the route to repeat, and to do that we go to the Options tab, and in this field called Repeat we can select the number of times that the loop repeats. If we enter a value of 0, the route will keep repeating until we manually stop the route. We will just repeat it a couple of times, so we will set it to a value of 2 and press return. The other options we can leave as they are for now. We now have to save the train route by pressing the apply button down here. So don't forget to do that, and then you should see the train route listed in this left hand section here and marked as active. And then we can close the route editor by clicking the cross button. That is the train route completed, but we now need to apply the route to the train that we wish to use. So we go up to the edit menu and to trains, and then in the list of trains here, we select the train that we want to use. I'm going to use this class 33. And then we go to the tabs here, make sure the routes tab is selected, and then make sure that the train route is listed here, is active and also selected. And then we click apply. Close down the train editor, and then if we go down to the control grid here, we can see this box marked route, and from this drop down menu we can then select the route that will be applied to this train. And you could also apply the same route to all of the other trains if you wish to. So we could select this train, for example, and then make sure that the route is selected here and the select tick box is ticked. So any or all of them can use the same route. Before we can start our route, our train needs to be positioned on the layout in any of the locations which are included in the route. So we could place the train on the start block, which is South Platform 1, or onto the North Platform, or the West or the East blocks. But if we were to position it on a block which wasn't in the route, like the south siding at the moment, which isn't part of the route of the oval, if we placed it there, the route would not begin and you would get an error. So if I was to drag this onto the south siding here and then click the start button to start the route, you'll see that we get an error message saying route is not possible from this position. And if you remember, we can get rid of these errors by double clicking on it in the control window here. So we'll place our train onto the start block, which was here, and we can press set to place it there. Of course, if you're using a physical layout, you'll need to physically lift your train and place it on the location where you want the route to start. I'm using a class 33 diesel that is capable of moving in either direction, and it has no carriages or wagons attached to it. So I don't need to bother about its orientation when it is on the layout here. If I was using a steam train or had a diesel with wagons attached to it, I would need to ensure that the train was correctly orientated, otherwise again the train or the route will not start. There's different ways that we can start a route. We can use the start button in the control grid down here, or in the overview panel, or we can left click and hold over the block window and then select the start from the menu here. We can also insert a route element onto the actual switchboard. So to do that, we go up to the switchboard editor, select a location where we want to enter the route, delete the section of straight track that is there, select the route element from the menu here, press space to enter it, and then R or T to rotate it. And then we need to make sure it's included as this group in this particular block. So we click, press G, and then click on the route icon again, press G so that it's part of the route, click away, press G again, and then we just need to save to ensure that that's correctly set against this group. We know there's no need to actually use the connect button. You'll see there's no updates needed to actually do that, because iTrain sees this as a straight piece of track as it was before we deleted it. So we can then press OK, and here we have the route item which we can click on to start the route. To stop a route, we can click on the stop symbol either in the control grid or the overview window, or by left clicking on the block symbol and selecting stop from there. If we start the route again and try to use the symbol here to stop, when we click on it, you'll see that it comes up with this X, and that is the finish symbol as opposed to the stop symbol. Clicking the symbol again will actually stop the route. The difference between stop and finish is that stop will stop the train where it currently is, and finish will allow the train to complete the whole loop that it is currently on. So in this case it would allow the train to go all the way round until it's back onto the South Platform 1. So it provides a much neater way of stopping a route. You can also select finish by left clicking over the block symbol again, or you can use the finish all button in the top of the window here, and that would finish all active routes that are currently running. Right, so let's start our route to test it. We're in offline mode, so when I press the start key you'll see it's reserved, and we need to double click on the feedback elements to transition the train around our layout. We need to wait until the speed has increased before we double click, otherwise we would get an error. So we'll double click here and rapidly move the train around the loop here. So you can see that offline mode is a very quick way of testing your track routes before you get them on the physical layout. So it's gone round one loop, it went through the 1 second wait, the speed has increased, we can see it increasing because of the blue bar. So again we're safe to then progress by double clicking the feedback items or the feedback elements, and we'll come round for the second loop. We can see it's going to wait when it gets in here because of the yellow bar, and when the wait is finished the route should now finish because we have gone round the 2 loops that we set, and we can see that the route has now finished. There's nothing else happening here, and so that looks to be successful. We've created our first little loop. So let's take a break here and we'll finish the remainder of the track route in part 2. Hope to see you then. Take care.